In this video, we are going to cover how you're going to be shading your hand for your sign language project using the HB pencil and eventually a 2B pencil. So I always make sure to have my reference image right close to me when I am coloring in something in a realistic style so I can get it as accurate as possible. I'm going to first start looking at the shadow that's on the right hand, the right side of the hand. It looks like my light source is coming in from the left, so on the left I have all of my highlights, my lighter areas, and on my right I have all my shadows. I'm going to be using the side of my pencil to start off with, or I can just lightly shade in. I'm just going to be using the edge of the pencil, not the tip. The tip will create a harsher line, while the side will create an easier blend. I am using very light pressure. I'm just blocking in where my shadows are going to be to start off with. So you see me going underneath the fingers, kind of along the side of the hand, and eventually I will get to the side of the finger along with the side of the arm. So at this point I have my base shadow set in with my very light pressure, so I am going to go back into those really dark shaded areas, and I'm going to be using a heavier touch with my pencil. Still not heavy yet. When you're using pencil, you do want to gradually layer on the color instead of going dark right away. That will help the overall blending and shading, and it'll help create a more realistic appearance. So you can see I'm making tiny circular motions, and now I'm going to go in and add that shaded area on top of the finger. I'm not going to pay attention to the wrinkles right now. The details are going to come later. Right now we are just focusing on the shading itself. So it looks like a majority of my shading is kind of condensed to that one finger in this image. This is where, if you would like a harsher shadow, you can always take a photo shoot with your own hand, and you can use that as your reference image. So I'm going in and I'm adding my shading in on the thumb now, making sure to add a little bit heavier pressure in that V because that's where the shading is on my image. So I am exaggerating it just a slight bit from the image just to create a more dynamic project and so that it is more detailed in general. So naturally there are shadows in between the fingers because some fingers might stick out more than others, creating a shadow. So you're going to go in at this point and add those into your composition. Up until this point, I haven't really done much detail with the fingernails quite yet, but now I am going to go in and kind of block out where the cuticle, where the top of the nail bed would lie, just because there is a shadow right there. So I'm just going to approximate where that might be. At this point, I am going to block it in, so I will be using the end of my pencil, but until this point, you should have just been focusing on the side. It is just a generally curved rectangle or a curved square right now, and I am not going to focus on the white part of the nail. I'm just going to focus on the shading itself. So I have blocked those in. Now I'm going to be going in and deepening my composition in general. So this is where I would start to use a medium to heavy pressure just to deepen the shadows. Something that really helps when you're drawing in a realistic style is having really dark shadows and really light highlights. So with this composition, we do want to color in nearly all of our hand using a really light value scale, almost on the lightest side. My pencil is in fact barely touching the paper at this point, besides when I am in an area that does show a dark shadow on it. This is so that we have a contrast between our rendered and detailed hand itself and the more cartoonish styled background. It will help it pop off of the page. am going to go in and give more attention to the shading on the fingernails and the wrinkles on the fingers. So I'm just going to quickly block these in. I am using a medium to heavy pressure when I'm doing this. And the wrinkles on the hands are more organic in nature, so they don't need to be as precise or as accurate as you might think. One thing that I always like to say is no one is really going to look at your reference image when they're looking at your artwork, so it's not as important that every single nitty-gritty detail does match your reference image. It just needs to be as close as you possibly can. Onto this point, I haven't really touched the arm portion of the hand, like the wrist area. My sketch is not going to the bottom of the page, but I would like your drawing to go to the bottom of the page on your nice paper, just so it doesn't look like you just have a hand floating in the middle of your page. This can be altered, of course, if your doodles do interact with the base of your hand in some way, shape, or form. This does not need as much detail as a hand because it just genuinely doesn't have as much detail as the hand. I am adding in the darker shading that's seen on the right side of the hand, and then I am going back in and I'm adding more just final touches onto my composition using my pencil and my eraser to get those bright highlights. So you can use these tips, techniques, or tricks on any of the other American Sign Language symbols that you will be drawing for this project.